My mother-in-law is the kind of person who loves to show off even the smallest achievements in the most over-the-top way. Despite not having much sophistication in her own life, she goes out of her way to act as though she's the center of attention in our social circles. One prime example of her bizarre behavior is the monthly club parties she hosts. To be clear, there is no real club. She just invites her friends and coworkers over for a social gathering, but because they all share the same profession, she refers to them as her fellow elites. This peculiar event has been going on for quite some time, and all they do is boast about their accomplishments from the past month. Given this background, you can imagine how eager she was to announce that my grandfather had gifted me a destination wedding package, which included a 6-day stay. It was an incredibly generous gesture, as I had often shared my dream wedding plans with him. Since I had a limited budget and a small venue, I had carefully created a guest list. My husband and I had discussed it in detail, and we agreed that we needed to prioritize close family and friends. With both of us coming from large families, narrowing down the list was no easy task. I managed to invite 30 people, while my husband invited 22 of our close friends and relatives, people we regularly interacted with. We were just about ready to send out the invitations when my mother-in-law unexpectedly showed up at our house late one evening. It was around 8 p.m., and she had neither been invited nor was she welcome. From the moment she arrived, I could feel my irritation growing. She immediately demanded that we make changes to the guest list, and I was stunned. I couldn't understand why she thought she had the right to dictate who should or shouldn't attend my own wedding. To my disappointment, my husband sided with her, which only made me more concerned. I asked what specific changes she wanted, and that's when she revealed that she had already promised invitations to a few of her work friends. She insisted they be included, as she considered them part of her circle. I explained politely to my mother-in-law that our guest list was already full and that everyone invited was someone we had a close and meaningful relationship with. Each person on the list was someone we interacted with regularly. I looked to my husband for support, but he avoided my eyes and, much to my frustration, sided with his mother. Despite my best efforts to explain the situation, she continued to insist that I make adjustments to fit in her chosen guests. Feeling frustrated, I showed her the list and pointed out that everyone on it was important to us and that there was no one we could exclude. She then suggested removing my cousin's sister, someone I had lived with for 6 years after college. Her reasoning was that my cousin had recently moved to Wolverhampton, so it would be inconvenient for her to travel to the wedding, which was in the States. At that point, my patience was wearing thin. I asked my husband to step in and talk some sense into his mother, hoping he would finally see reason, but he continued to back her up. He emphasized how important it was to invite her chosen guests, especially since she had already shared details of our destination wedding with them. I was boiling with frustration and felt like I was losing control of my own wedding plans. It was as if my feelings didn't matter at all. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I stormed out of the room, overwhelmed by the situation. The next day, I woke up with a firm decision. If my mother-in-law and fiancé could be so inconsiderate and prioritize their own social image over my wedding plans, then I would match their attitude. I would give them a taste of their own medicine. I called my grandfather, who had generously gifted us the destination wedding package, and recounted everything that had happened the night before. I told him I wasn't going to waste any more energy trying to reason with them. Instead, I decided to remove the main attraction from their little show. I told my grandfather, whom I loved dearly, that I would be removing him, my grandmother, and my dad's brother and his family from the guest list. I also asked him to cancel the wedding gift he had given me since he would no longer be attending. Thankfully, my grandfather understood why I was doing this and supported me without holding any hard feelings. Later, I sent the revised guest list to my mother-in-law and fiancé, and they were shocked. Calmly, I informed them that these were the only people I could remove from the list, but because of that decision, we had lost the wedding venue and the package that came with it. I also made sure my fiancé knew that unless we found a new venue within the next 3 months, we would have to postpone the wedding. On top of that, there was now the extra burden of reprinting the invitation cards and making new arrangements for out-of-town guests. This was the consequence of their actions. By prioritizing their own social standing over my wishes, they had jeopardized the entire event. I wanted both my fiancé and mother-in-law to fully understand that this entire situation wouldn't have happened if not for the generosity of my family member who had paid for half of our wedding. However, I didn't expect them to suddenly apologize for their actions or feel guilty. Then, unexpectedly, my mother-in-law came over again, expressing regret for pressuring me into changing the guest list. She pleaded with me to call my grandpa and ask him to reinstate his invitation, hoping he wouldn't cancel the hotel reservations or change anything else. Her sudden change of heart caught me off guard, and I couldn't help but wonder why she was apologizing now after getting what she wanted. She had already ensured that her colleagues were invited, and the weight of her decision seemed to be catching up with her. She was frustrated, saying that it wouldn't make sense to invite them unless the wedding remained a destination wedding. She emphasized that without the destination, the event would be too ordinary and uninteresting to her guests. As she voiced these concerns, my husband finally admitted that he regretted supporting her decision in the first place. While I appreciated his acknowledgement, I wasn't ready to let him off the hook so easily. I reminded him that it shouldn't take a dramatic situation like this for him to stand by me, especially when it was obvious that his support should have been with me from the start. Although he apologized again, I made it clear that my decision was final. The guest list changes were permanent, and even if I were to reinvite my grandpa, we wouldn't get back the incredibly generous gift he had offered. Was I being stubborn by sticking to my decision? Maybe. But I realized that this was my wedding, and I needed to prioritize my own feelings. Still, a part of me couldn't shake off a slight sense of guilt. Did standing firm make me petty or selfish? I wondered if I was wrong for not reversing my decision, even though I knew it was justified. Despite my firm stance, my mother-in-law wasn't done causing problems. As I mentioned earlier, I had no intention of asking my grandpa to reinstate his gift. This decision visibly upset her, and she soon developed a habit of calling my fiancé almost every other day. During these calls, she portrayed me as an ungrateful troublemaker who was seeking revenge. Yes, I had made certain choices that made me feel empowered, but being labeled as ungrateful when she was the one responsible for the entire situation felt unfair. But it didn't stop there. She took things a step further, advising my fiancé to reconsider his entire future with me. She hinted that what I had done was just the beginning, and that if he married me, his life would be filled with constant conflict and unhappiness. During one of these conversations, my fiancé was speaking on speakerphone, and I overheard every hurtful word she said. Oddly enough, I felt grateful for this moment of transparency. Normally, my fiancé would hide things from me if he thought they might cause conflict between us, but this time, I knew exactly what she was saying behind my back. He did tell his mother that she had crossed a line, but he didn't confront her as strongly as I had hoped. I understand that it's his relationship with his mother, and I can't ask him to cut ties with her just because she doesn't like me. However, I'm fully aware that her interference is going to be a recurring issue in our relationship if things don't change. If this continues, I'm concerned about how much strain it will put on our marriage in the long run. I'm committed to building a life with my fiancé, but I also know that we can't keep letting his mother dictate the terms of our relationship. At some point, boundaries need to be set, and I hope he realizes that before it's too late. I fear I might eventually reach a breaking point because the thought of dealing with this situation for the rest of my life is overwhelming. Today, I had a heart-to-heart conversation with my grandpa, sharing the news about the new wedding venue we had secured. While it didn't completely match the vision I had always dreamed of, it was still a beautiful place, and I found contentment in it. I reassured him that he was once again invited, and hearing his laughter on the other end of the line warmed my heart. The love and gratitude I felt for him were immense. He had always stood by me, and even now, he continued to be a pillar of support. After this, I knew it was time to confront my husband about his mother's escalating behavior. We had an honest conversation about how uncomfortable and painful some of these situations had been. He listened, and in the end, he promised to have a serious talk with his mother to set clear boundaries and define her role in our lives moving forward. I was hopeful that we could move past the drama and enjoy a smoother journey as a couple. Finally, the wedding day arrived, and I am happy to say that I am officially married. Despite the unexpected twists and turns leading up to it, the wedding was absolutely beautiful, and my joy was boundless. I couldn't help but smile to myself when I noticed my mother-in-law sulking in a corner with the work friends she had insisted on inviting. It felt like a small victory in a day that otherwise went perfectly. In a wonderful and unexpected turn of events, my grandpa and my uncle surprised us with an incredible wedding gift house. Their joint gesture took me by surprise and added even more happiness to an already special day. In the grand scheme of things, I'm just thrilled to be starting this new chapter of my life with my husband. Despite the challenges, I feel grateful for all the support I've had along the way. I wanted to share this update with all of you who have followed this journey with me. It's infuriating how some people believe they have the right to dictate how someone should get married or decide who they should invite. It's high time that my mother-in-law realizes that her influence in these decisions is over. If she wants to host events to flaunt herself, she can do that on her own. But as for my wedding and my life, she needs to back off. Looking back, I do question how my husband supported her at times when it was clear she was playing a manipulative game. It made me wonder if I was missing something, but I've learned that it's important to scrutinize situations like this and make sure you're making the right choices for yourself. On a more personal note, outside of all the wedding drama, life continues. I live in South Australia, while my family resides in Western Australia. Recently, my parents and my 29-year-old sister decided to invite themselves over to my house for a week-long holiday after their cruise got cancelled. Honestly, I wasn't too thrilled about it, especially considering I'm pregnant and already busy taking care of my 3-year-old. To complicate things further, our house is not large enough to comfortably accommodate multiple guests for that long. It's going to be a challenge, but I'll manage just like I've managed everything else. This entire experience has been a roller coaster, but I'm excited about the future and all the possibilities it holds. Here's to embracing this new chapter, stronger and wiser. I only have one spare queen-sized bed in my home, which my parents were occupying. My sister, however, decided to sleep on the couch. She could have shared my bed with me since my husband was away for work, but her loud snoring and the constant need to nudge her to roll over made that option impossible. After 4 days of their stay, things took a turn during dinner on the second night. Out of the blue, my dad casually dropped a bombshell. He informed me that they had invited my sister's boyfriend, whom she had only been dating for 6 weeks, to fly up and stay with us for the entire weekend. He had already booked his ticket and was set to arrive on Sunday morning at 8 a.m. I was completely taken aback. I had never met my sister's boyfriend before, and it bothered me that no one had even thought to consult me about this. To make matters worse, I simply didn't have the space for him. He would have had to sleep on the couch, meaning my sister would either have to share the couch with him or sleep in my bed with me, none of which seemed comfortable or appropriate. Plus, the idea of having a stranger sleep in my house, especially with my 3-year-old son in his own room, was unsettling. Frustrated, I immediately called my husband, and together we made the decision to firmly refuse this arrangement. We both felt that inviting someone I didn't know into our home without even asking for my permission was completely unacceptable. I called my sister to let her know about our decision while I was at work, and that's when things escalated. My mother exploded in anger, berating me and questioning my judgment. She accused me of doubting their ability to assess someone's character, insisting that they wouldn't invite someone into my home who couldn't be trusted even though they had only known this boyfriend for 5 weeks and met him fewer than 10 times. Before I could get another word in, they abruptly hung up on me. Not long after, they packed up their things and left my house. Later, I received a text message from them, accusing me of allowing my husband to manipulate me against them. They claimed they were leaving not because they were wrong, but because I had been an inhospitable host. They even went as far as to say that I had become a terrible person since being with my husband over the past 12 years. Their words hurt deeply, and the entire situation left me feeling disrespected and confused. 5 days passed, and then they tried to call me as if nothing had happened. It was baffling to me how they could ignore what had just transpired. Their inability to understand my reaction or see the situation from my perspective was mind-boggling. Now I'm left wondering, am I overreacting? I honestly don't think so. I believe I was just being a responsible parent, not unreasonable in the slightest. They hadn't asked me if they could stay for that long, and I certainly don't have an obligation to be a perfect host to family members who essentially invaded my home and disrespected my boundaries. On top of that, they invited a complete stranger, my sister's boyfriend of only 6 weeks, without my knowledge or consent. The entitlement they showed was shocking, almost as if they couldn't stand the fact that I've grown up and am making decisions without seeking their approval. This situation feels like a turning point where I need to establish clear boundaries. It's time for them to understand that they can no longer dictate how I manage my life, my home, or my family. Setting these boundaries isn't easy, but it's necessary to move forward and protect my peace. I made it very clear to my family that I wasn't being a terrible host just because I didn't agree to their plans. I didn't invite them in the first place, they invited themselves into my home. Despite the disruption to our daily routine, I generously made space for them. But when they decided to invite another person, someone I had never met, without asking for my permission, it crossed a line. That kind of behavior was completely unacceptable. When I refused to go along with their plan and stood my ground, they threw a tantrum, packed up their things, and left to find other accommodations. All the while, they attacked my character, which was hurtful. Their immature behavior made it clear that there would need to be a new set of rules before I would ever consider hosting them again. For now, I've decided to keep my distance from them. I won't be going to visit or spending time with them after what they pulled in my home. I've had enough of their inappropriate actions, and I need some time to feel ready to face them again. They crossed a significant line by inviting someone into my home without my consent. They didn't ask if it was okay, they simply told me it was happening, which showed a total lack of respect for my boundaries. The fact that they mentioned I seemed to be in a good mood makes it clear they knew it wasn't a great idea, but assumed I'd just go along with it. They thought I would be a pushover, but I'm standing up for myself and my children's well-being, and I know I'm not wrong for doing so. At 34 years old, currently 4 months pregnant, and with my 36-year-old husband away on a business trip for another month, I'm doing my best to manage everything. This is my first pregnancy, and I'm still working full-time at the office. Given all that's going on, the last thing I needed was the added stress of family members disrespecting my space and boundaries. When I first met my husband, he was quite skinny, and I soon realized why. His mother's cooking habits were very restrictive. She avoided spices, sauces, herbs, and even basic ingredients like salt, sugar, and pepper, believing that a bland diet was healthier. My husband had grown used to this tasteless food, but once he tried my cooking, he realized what he had been missing. He discovered a world of flavor beyond his mother's plain and limited recipes. One Thursday, I was really craving curry, so I made a big batch. Normally, I keep pre-prepared meals in the freezer, but I couldn't resist the temptation this time. I left the extra portions in the fridge, looking forward to enjoying them later. However, that same day, my in-laws decided to visit unexpectedly. They have a spare key for emergencies, and without warning, they let themselves into my house while I was out. When I returned home, ready to dig into my delicious curry, I was shocked to find that it was gone. In its place was a dish my mother-in-law had made. She had thrown away my curry, claiming that it tasted spoiled. I was furious. Not only had she wasted food I had been craving, but I also couldn't stomach her bland cooking, especially in my pregnant state. Her actions left me feeling even more frustrated, as it seemed like she still felt entitled to make decisions in my home without consulting me. This whole situation has shown me the importance of setting boundaries, not just with my parents but with my in-laws too. It's essential for my peace of mind and the safety of my growing family. I'm learning that standing up for myself doesn't make me a bad person, it makes me a responsible one. I quietly gave the unwanted food to a homeless person, hoping to avoid any drama. However, someone saw me doing this and informed my in-laws. Before I knew it, I was being bombarded with accusatory messages from them, including my mother-in-law. They were furious that I had given away the food she had made. Thankfully, my husband stood by me and supported my decision, but now I find myself wondering if I overreacted. Honestly, it feels like my in-laws are trying to control my life. The bigger issue isn't just about the food my mother-in-law threw away, it's the fact that they're constantly crossing boundaries. They let themselves into my house without permission when I wasn't even there, which is a huge red flag. The more I think about it, the more I realize that the real problem here is the lack of respect for my personal space and my decisions. My home is supposed to be my sanctuary, especially now that I'm expecting a child. Setting clear, firm boundaries with my in-laws has become essential before the baby arrives. If they can't respect simple things like asking before coming over or not throwing away my food, how will they act when my child is born? It's a troubling thought. I'm considering taking more serious steps, like changing the locks and possibly installing security cameras to protect our privacy and maintain peace of mind. I know it might sound extreme, but it's become clear that I need to reclaim control of my home. My in-laws, particularly my mother-in-law, seem to think they have the right to do whatever they want in our space, but that's not okay. It's important to remember that your home is your own space, and you have every right to feel safe, comfortable, and respected in it. Setting boundaries with family can be difficult, but it's crucial for your well-being and the well-being of your growing family. I know I have to stand firm in protecting my space, especially as we prepare for the arrival of our child. In the end, this experience has taught me that it's not just about food or one small act of kindness, it's about taking control of my life and setting clear expectations with those around me. I deserve to have a home that feels safe and respected, and so does my family.